Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hunter Mozingo bringing you your daily market insight video for Monday, July 26th. That is about 10 minutes after market close here in Jacksonville, Florida. And we've got a big week ahead with some big earnings from some of the biggest companies in the world and in America. We have Tesla reporting today, Apple tomorrow. So, like I said, a big week. But today in this video, we're actually going to be discussing whether or not we're witnessing an important change in a beaten up sector. I'm going to cover that sector and some of its constituents towards the end. First, I'm going to highlight some of the big winners from today, the strength, the relative strength leaders from today, and then I'm going to go through some laggards. And as always, I will review the indices charts as we're still kind of really in the same place we were for the most part on Friday. And so you can see under what just happened, oil and metals / mining lead the way. Indices relatively flat, and you can tell by the numbers down there below that the S&P was up 0.25%, the Q's up 0.08, Dow up 0.25%, mid caps up 0.12, and the Russell 2000 up 0.33%. So a relatively muted day for the indices, but there were some sectors that have been hit pretty hard that really showed strength and carried some of the indices today. And we're going to get to those here in just a moment. First, before we do that, let me review the market state and the market trend. So the market state has not changed from Friday from Don's videos. This uptrend has come back on, and that's pretty evident by the vicious rally we saw in the markets, particularly in the NASDAQ over the last 4 days of last week, or even the last half of Monday's market day as well. But the Q stands for the fact that the Qs are extended here. This is in red for that reason. The Qs are still sitting at about 6.5 to 7% above the 50, which is kind of a caution level. You just want to be careful as historically, or at least over the last year, when that starts to happen, that tends to kind of just want to flash a caution sign to you. When you get between 6 and 7 or beyond that percent above the 50-day on the Qs, really got to pay attention to that. And then the SML stands for the fact that small and mid caps are still struggling to get over their 50. They did see some positive action today, as I mentioned. Oils did okay, metals did okay, but they're still not able to get back over some of those declining moving averages overhead. Secondly, the market trend has no changes either. Medium remains the same for the exact same reason I just mentioned. The Qs are about 7% above the 50. That's just a caution sign due to how extended they are. Short term remains the same, pointing back towards neutral. We are above on the S&P and the Dow in a much more reasonable fashion. Small caps and mid caps really kind of struggling with the 21 EMA at the current time. Market leaders remains bullish. We're still seeing some solid action in those market leaders, and long term we are above the 200-day moving average on all major indices. So before we get into the charts, this is the team at Revere. This is me in the middle. If you have any questions or comments on anything I cover in the video, please reach out to me. If you're interested in what Revere does from an investment standpoint or what we do as a company, you can reach out to me, Hunter at revereasset.com, or any of these guys, Dan, Tim, Alex, or Don at revereasset.com as well. So let's get straight to it. Let's go to the S&P first. And you can see bar is kind of trying to get out of the screen here, but a little bit extended from just a historical standpoint. Looking back here, even at the run that began in November, really the S&P was kind of hovered anywhere from 3.5 to 5% as it stayed above the 21. You can see here we got down to 3, back up to 4, 4.5 or so, 5. And here we are. We're not nearly as extended as the Qs on the S&P, but we are approaching that 4% from the 50 area, only 2% from the 21 EMA, which is not absurd by any means, but it's been a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-day rally for the S&P. It's just something to keep in mind, and it's going to look very similar on the NASDAQ here as well. You can see the Qs have the same thing, finished at the top of the range on Monday, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slightly up today as well. 5 strong days, 6 strong days really for the markets, for the Qs, and closing at the top of the range. But like we mentioned, still about 6.5% above the 50, about 3% above the 21 EMA. But Don mentioned this in his video too. We were 3% from the 50, or maybe even a little bit less than that at one point at the lows on Monday. And in a matter of 4 days, we went from right around 3% from the 50 up back to 7% very, very quickly. So the Q's really moving strong, maintaining that leadership role in this current market. And the Dow looking okay, but just not quite as strong as the others. Kind of eking out some new highs here today. Not very extended whatsoever, 2% from the 50, 1% from the 21. Much more contained action here from the Dow as it reclaimed those moving averages. And like I mentioned with small caps and mid caps, they're trying, but they're struggling. Ran into some resistance here at the overhead declining 21 EMA on IWM. And excuse me, MDY looks relatively similar, but with the 50, ran into some overhead resistance here at the 50, but sitting above the 21. So MDY holding up a tiny bit better for the time being. IWM's really gotten hit hard with some of the financials and oil and gas really getting sold off over the last few weeks, but not today. XOP and XLE, two of the leading sectors. They're both oil and gas. One is oil and gas exploration. I'll show you XLE here. This is just the energy selects spider sector. So they're made up a little bit differently, but both having a really nice day. XLE up 2.5%, back above that 8-day exponential moving average. As you can see here, that's the pink line. And then XOP, same story, back above there. It's 8-day exponential moving average. I want to say it got really close to these previous highs here. 85.77 is the high of this day. You may want to set an alert at that level, 85.77 on XOP. But strong today after a really brutal sell-off. You can see here, starting pretty much on 7/14 all the way into Monday, this past Monday. XOP and XLE really took a beating, making a little bit back today. And they're really, a lot of the individual names in these ETFs don't look as great, but you can see FANG stuck its head back above the 8-day exponential moving average. Matador is going to look pretty similar here. So some of these names making a little comeback. While a lot of these are on lower volume, you got to note where the strength is. And today it was undoubtedly in oil and gas. That was the leading group. And also the sector that I'm going to talk about at the end of the show was a leader today as well. Some other standouts from today: Domino's Pizza up 1.3%, holding up nicely after a big gap up on earnings. Also Amazon with earnings in just a few days, showing some relative strength today, up 1.2%, sitting right at that 3,700 level. Tesla, which also has earnings today. So I have yet to see what the numbers look like. I see the reaction here. It looks like it's pretty much flat. So we'll see how that plays out in the morning and for the rest of the after hours session. Tesla reported earnings after the close, but up 2.2% today. Mike can say that's just because they have earnings today, and that's why it was showing relative strength. But nonetheless, acting pretty good, staying above this 200, staying above the 21 and the 8-day exponential. We'll see how that plays out in the morning once this starts trading following this earnings report. Roku, another standout for the day. Continuing higher after a monster move here on the 23rd, just a 12.5% day, ran up and pretty much touched this high right here, this 486.32 or 486.72, excuse me. Another area where you might want to set an alert, and I guess it came within 40 cents of it. So 486.32, the high of today, 486.72, the high going all the way back to 216.21. And lastly, as far as big standouts go, Bitcoin and Ethereum making a monstrous rally over the weekend, both up around 20 to 25% or more over the course of this weekend, really from Friday to today. And there was some announcements that Amazon may be beginning to accept cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, by the end of the year. I do not know if those rumors are true and what the validity behind them is. But nonetheless, Bitcoin really made a strong move. The actual Bitcoin, not the GBTC, I believe is back above the 200-day, so is Ethereum. So keep your eye on this cryptocurrency. I mean, this is a big volume move. We'll see if it has any merit to it, and if some of those previous areas that Bitcoin and Ethereum have struggled with as resistance can turn into support if they push through those levels. Some laggards for the day: Shopify down 3.5%. Still, I mean, a very extended stock, had been on a monster run. Not really anything out of the ordinary with today's action, but it was a laggard. Snapchat came down and pretty much tested the lows of the gap day, held them, but still a little bit weak today, down 2%, but really not anything to bat your eyes about when it was up 24% the day prior. In mode, and I should point out, we own Snap, we own in mode, in Grotection. In mode, just a laggard today. They have earnings coming up, and you'll see this is a recurring thing. There's lots of companies that have earnings in the next 2, 3, 4 days or a week or two out. So just something to be mindful of when you are starting new positions, or if you're considering starting new positions. Always know when that EPS announcement is. And last couple of laggards here before we get to the sector of the day. NVIDIA staying above the 21 EMA, just what you would want it to do, down 1.5% on light volume. Nothing wrong with it, but once again, it was significantly weaker this morning, down almost 3%, came back throughout the day. And last few here, Twilio, which has been strong and on our radar, down 3% today, kind of like Shop, had gotten extended over the last 5 or 6 days, pulled back pretty much to the 8-day or very close to it today. And Roblox cannot seem to get anything going. Roblox down over 5%. See this reversal into the 21 EMA, just no real ability to get through it. And then today, very weak. So now you're at the point where you really got to watch these lows here right around 75. If those don't hold, look out below on this one. And now I want to talk about the sector of the day, and I want to talk about a possible change in character and what that looks like and why I would be discussing this on a day like today. So I'm going to run through a handful of these names. First, I'm going to show you the ETF. Then we're going to look at some of the constituents of the ETF and talk about exactly what I'm referencing as a possible change in character. So bear with me here. But XME was one of the strongest sectors in today's market. You can see it, similar to oil stocks, was sold off very hard, kind of in the 714 to 719 range. It bounced here very strongly, bounced again the next day. But today, a lot of these names, particularly in the steel area of the metals and mining ETF or the metals and mining sector, doing something that they haven't done in a while. And that's what I want to highlight today. So for one, XME is back above the 21 EMA. Hasn't done that since these 2 days here. And you can see there's more volume today than there was on either one of these 2 days, okay? So that's what I want to highlight, is the fact that on these 2 days, XME was only able to get about 0.5% above the 21. Today, they're 2%. So they really kind of cleared that 21 EMA resistance with conviction, or with a little bit of power. And if you go look at some of these names in here, you see the same kind of thing. So ArcelorMittal, MT, this is one that actually is borderline breaking out here, only about 20 cents, 30 cents off of it. A very strong move. They do have earnings coming up in a few days, but you can't ignore this move, and on above average volume as well. Alcoa, AA, which recently reported earnings, really strong reclaim of these moving averages. You can see they reported earnings right here, like I believe on the 16th or the 15th there. Bottomed out around this 31, 32 level here and came back up. Strong action today, above average volume on 3 of these 4 up days, and nice continuation today as well. Next, we're going to look at FCX, not a steel stock. This is a copper stock. Doesn't look as good as some of the ones I just showed you, but what's important is this is the first close above the 21 EMA for FCX since June 4th. That is quite some time. I mean, that is almost 2 full months, and we now see the first full close over the 21. Some decent volume, not incredible, but also you got earnings behind it. So back above the 21 for the first time in nearly 2 months. NUE back above the 21. This is the only time it's been able to get above it. And like we showed you with some of the other stocks we just looked at, only a 0.5% or so. Today we're sitting at 2%, 3% above the 21 EMA. And we'll just run through these last few really quick. STLD back above the 21 EMA. Cleveland Cliffs, another more broader steel company, just reported earnings, got back above the 50, got back above the 21. VALE, a metal mining company based out of Brazil, or just foreign company here in South America's back above the 21, back above the 50. And lastly, TX, which is another foreign steel company, for whatever reason has been way ahead of the game in regards to this move here. You can see the fundamentals are great, but TX is certainly the leader for the time being in the steel industry. It is just not the most liquid name out there in the space. So as you can see, some of these names are doing things that they haven't done in a while. For getting above the 21 EMA by more than just a 0.5% or so, maybe 2 or 3% in some cases, or closing above the 21 for the first time in 2 months. So those are the types of things you want to take notice, especially when some of the other areas are not doing so well. Oil and gas has not come back as strong, but they also peaked a little bit later than metals and mining. So what I'm looking for on a lot of these names is, one, how do they act when they run into this 50? And two, can they string together consecutive closes above the 21 EMA? So I'm looking to see, a close tomorrow above the 21 EMA, a close Wednesday above the 21 EMA. And if they can do that, that really is a change in character, because you can see XME hasn't had consecutive closes really above the 21, except for this, since the middle of June here. And then most of these individual names are actually, it's typically longer than that. So just something to watch here, something I observed as I was going through the data, going through the charts today. But that's going to wrap the video up, everybody. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, any comments, like I said, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to respond. But enjoy your weeks. I will see you guys on Thursday's video, as well as on the podcast this weekend. Have a great week, everybody.